Gulliver's Travels, page 575. Notice the literary element of parody here. You hear parody nowadays, and the main person that comes to my mind is Weird Al Yankovic. Okay, if you know him, he takes the exact same song, same rhythm, all of that, just changes the lyrics and makes it kind of funny. Maybe puts a little polka twist to whatever the music situation is. But this particular piece is a parody of a travel journal. At this particular time, people were starting to travel a little bit more, okay? And not everybody could afford to travel. And so these people would go out and have an adventure, go see far-flung places, and come back and write about their adventures and pass it along. And then everybody who's poor, we can live our travels and our vacations through you, the author, okay? So this particular piece is a parody. The character's name is Gulliver, okay? The root of that is the word gullible, which means you easily believe stuff. You're easily fooled, okay? This is not, a legit journal. This was written as a parody. There is a ton of satire sprinkled throughout here as well. And as we go through it, I want you to be able to pick apart these things. Now, Gulliver is from England, okay? He's English. Swift is Irish from Ireland, okay? And we already know the hostilities between the two countries. Okay, we just spent a long time in Modest Proposal talking, or I spent a lot of time talking about it. Okay, so as we go through this, remember, Gulliver is speaking for the English. What might Swift be saying, the author, by the words that are coming out of his mouth? You see how he could be kind of condemning himself and his own country because Swift is writing about it from the outside? We'll talk more about that at the end. But the first one begins, it's called A Voyage to Lilliput. This is from a bigger works, and we're only going to read two small sections of the travels. And this is a place where he wakes up, tied down, and a bunch of small people. So he's a giant in a small land. You've probably seen that, allusions to that several different places. There was a Star Wars, the Clone Wars cartoon last year. I was watching with my kid, and all of a sudden, C-3PO was tied down. I'm like, and everybody's small. I'm like, this is Gulliver. So I might have put it on Moodle. So if you wanted to check that little scene out. But I mean, you see allusions to this stuff all the time, a giant being tied down and that type of thing. If you ever saw the cartoon Mickey and the Tailor, and he ties down a big giant, you might remember that type of thing. But you see the allusions to it a lot in literature, and wonderful cartoons every once in a while. Gulliver's Travels from A Voyage to Lilliput. Lilliput, as I said, and as you see in the illustration on the next page, they, he's a man mountain, they refer to him as. They have all of these, lines and ropes drawn over him. 576 there that said, besides, they shot another flight into the air as we do bombs in Europe. And remember I told you in the preface to this that think about what might the Irish Swift be saying about the English with Gulliver being English, okay? So Gulliver's saying that they're shooting more stuff at me, kind of like we shoot stuff at, bombs back in Europe, back in England. When the people observed that I was quiet, they discharged no more arrows. So when I stopped fighting, they stopped shooting at me. And things were fine. He even says that I'm probably enough of a match that I could take care of their biggest armies if I truly wanted to, but he didn't. He's not there to war and fight. They brought baskets full of meat. They fed them. These people are 6 inches tall. Here's where we kind of start getting into the ridiculousness of these small people. We see the emperor with that crazy long name, not really relevant. But look at to whom Gulliver is addressing at the beginning of that particular paragraph there. Because the reader may perhaps be curious to some idea of the style and manner of expression particular to that people. So the reader, remember, we are reading a parody of a travel magazine, a travel book, something. And so Gulliver's recounting his story through this travel magazine, brochure, pamphlet to English. And just my readers might be curious, how did they communicate? How did they talk? What was the communication like? So let me tell you about it. So let me tell you what the emperor's name is, and let me tell you a little bit about him. And he goes into great detail. Look at just the hyperbole, just the description of the emperor. They believe that there's only 12 miles in circumference of the earth. They believe that their earth is only, this land. 12 miles circumference, all the way around. The monarch of all monarchs, taller than the sons of men, whose feet press down to the center and whose heads strike against the sun, at whose nod the princes of the earth shake their knees. So really an intimidating, imposing individual, especially for somebody, that tall? Okay, gets us all in perspective. The king told the man mountain, his reference to him, because he's a man in mountain, look at the listing of things that, you know what, you're going to do these things for me. Why? Because I say so. Because we could do things to you. The little man thinks he has power over Gulliver. He goes, first, the man mountain shall not depart from our dominions without our license. So you cannot leave without our permission. Okay? Because we're going to untie you. But there are certain rules you got to play by. And some of these sound, well, that's probably a good idea. Because imagine the damage that a big roaming giant could do to the little people and such. Second, he shall not presume to come into our metropolis without our express order. We've seen how, what happens when Godzilla comes walking around. Okay? So don't even think about coming to our cities without us knowing ahead of time. Don't just show up. That might freak some people out. Okay? Thirdly, the said man mountain shall confine his walks to our principal high roads and not offer to walk or lie down in the meadow or field. Think about how much damage he could do by laying down in somebody's field. The size, right? You took a step, might be an acre. He lays down, that could be hectares. It could be a ton of acreage. And what would that do to that person's crops? And so you got to be careful. Okay? Again, the parody of a travel journal. And the absurdity of the satire as well. Fifthly, the man mountain shall be obliged to carry in his pocket the messenger and horse. 6 days' journey once in every moon, so once every month. You're going to take a crew, a man and his horse, and carry them and go survey. Because imagine, he could walk and cover a lot of distance as opposed to a man on a little horse. And he can just huge strides. So you're going to start surveying our land for us. Sixth, he shall be our ally against our enemies in the island of Blefuscu, and do his utmost to destroy their fleet, which is now preparing to invade us. And now it gets to a little bit more of, well, what can he do for, it isn't so much, look at the liberties we're going to give you. It's more about, what can he do for us? Well, he can survey our land, show us what we truly own and all, but he can be a big warrior. And that's what that example is, the example of the illustration on the other page. And there, there are a couple other things for him. You don't need to know all 8 or 9 or 10 something, but just the restrictions put on him by the small individual. The last thing about Lilliput that is of interest, and I think that really screams the satire of this situation and what Swift might truly be saying, subtext here through Gulliver and through the Lilliputians, is talking about their enemies. If you look down at the bottom of 578, this is even before the war. He's talking about here at home. Here at home, we labor under 2 mighty evils, a violent faction at home and the danger of an invasion by a most potent enemy from abroad. And so, Blefuscu from abroad, but even we have infighting here. Okay? And it's so ridiculous that the way with which we can differentiate between this person and this person, they refer to them as the Tremexan and the Slumexan, are by the size of their heels, their shoes that they wear. If somebody's a low heel or a high heel, I see your shoes, I know exactly what type of person you are. It's very much could be, a poke at, maybe some sort of organized Congress. We have Democrats and Republicans. Do they get along very well? Some might say that their inability to get together and work together is what hurts our country. Some might say that. Some might say that the low heels and the high heels cannot function, and that's causing us to have some issues here at home. And that's one of our mighty evils is or are the heels. Okay? And it's ridiculous, right? The shoes. That's what they use to differentiate their beliefs and their ideologies about what should happen. It's ridiculous. But even more ridiculous is the war. Were you able to figure out what the war was about? What they were fighting about? What happened? What happened? On what? He cracked an egg and cut his finger. Okay, you've all cracked an egg. You crack it on the fat end. Great, excellent, and throw that away. Ah, I hurt myself. It's against the law to crack it on the big end, which we will refer to as big endians. Anybody that does it, dead. You must crack it on the small end. I've never attempted to crack it on the small end. I doubt it's very clean. That's very even doable. Aren't you allowed, like, the physics of it? Can't you, like, put more pressure on it? You know what I mean? Stand it up on end, and I think it would take a lot more force to break it that way than squish the fat end and crack it the way you normally do. But look at the description of their history, the wars that have been fought, the people who have died, the people who have said, go ahead and kill me because I'm not going to crack my egg on the small end, I'm going to crack it on the fat end. How stupid. Okay? And this is that satire. How ridiculous is it that they're fighting over that? Now, we need to step out of this and think about what Swift might be saying about war. Can you see wars fought for stupid things? I tell you, wars have been, and people have died for a lot less than an egg. Have you ever heard of the Battle of Troy? The movie Troy? What was that fought about? One woman. Okay? She eloped and went off to be with the Trojan prince. Well, the Greeks had a problem with that. So Greeks waged a war that went on for 7 years, 11 years, something like that, where Achilles fought and stuff. And there's a line, a Shakespearean line or a Marlowe line that goes, is this the face that launched 1,000 ships? And that's supposed to be a very beautiful thing to say to a woman. Because is this the face that launched 1,000 ships that people went and had a war about? Okay. Now, is he directly referring to Troy? No. Do you think he's making a statement about war and anti-war and stuff? Probably. About how ridiculous and stupid. We have lost 40 capital ships and a much greater number of smaller vessels, together with 30,000 of our best seamen and soldiers. And the damage received by the enemy is reckoned to be somewhat greater than ours. So not only have we taken this big hit, but we've, whatever losses we've had, supposedly our enemies have had even greater losses. My gosh, look at all these people that are dying because of an egg, and you're just following your leaders without having any sort of thoughts for yourself. Okay? So a warfaring nation fighting about stupid stuff. Okay? We have these little guys who are very aggressive and very violent. Okay? And they have their Tremexans and Selexans, their government, their fights here and abroad. Just like a lot of the countries that do have wars, us and other people, we have our evils here and our evils abroad. And a lot of people think that just by fighting, that's the way to take care of your situations.